Have you ever noticed? Many people live year after year with the same mindset, the same habits, the same set of excuses, and then wonder why nothing changes. They wait for luck, for a miraculous event, or for someone to come rescue them. But Hill never believed in salvation from the outside. He believed in internal rebirth, a journey that begins not with fortune, but with a decision. A decision that is quiet yet powerful, to change your thinking, to act with intention, and to live with courage. You cannot wish for a different life while continuing to think and live the same way. You cannot begin a new chapter if you keep rereading the old one. And that is where the real beginning lies, not on the first day of the year, but in the fresh choice made within you. Yet Hill also once warned, the desire to change is not enough. Dreams cannot become reality without guiding principles. You need a system not just to know what to do, but to hold you steady when emotions fluctuate, when laziness creeps in, when disappointment knocks on your door. Like a ship at sea cannot rely solely on sunlight, it needs a map, a compass, and a captain who knows the destination. Life is the same. If you don't live by a clear set of principles, you will be swept away by circumstances. And the most painful thing isn't that you haven't yet reached where you want to be. It's that you drift somewhere vague and unintentional, only to wake up and realize you are far from what you once longed for. That is why Napoleon Hill did not offer the world vague advice or fleeting inspiration. He left behind a set of life principles, ones that can be applied, acted upon, and verified, not just theory, but practical tools, tools that can help you realign your thinking, reshape your habits, and redesign your life. You may have tried many things, but if you are willing to deeply learn and practice the 10 principles Hill left us, you won't just change a week or a month. You can restructure your entire internal operating system. And from there, rewrite your entire future. The question is no longer, will this year be different? The real question is, am I brave enough to be different? And when you answer that question with concrete action, a new chapter will not merely begin, it will be written with awareness, with intention, and with a power that no one but you can create. If you are truly serious about your desire to change your life, you will understand that fleeting inspiration, no matter how intense, is never enough to take you far. Napoleon Hill had witnessed far too many people begin a journey with a burning flame in their hearts, only to see it fade within a few weeks or even a few days, simply because they lacked a clear system to sustain that spirit when reality strikes. He said, "It is not those who start strong that win, but those who have principles to keep their steps steady throughout the journey." And that is precisely why the life principles Hill left behind remain profoundly relevant, perhaps even more urgent in today's world of chaos and distraction. Have you ever wondered why some people keep moving forward through adversity while others give up at the slightest obstacle? Have you ever realized that successful people are not necessarily luckier than you? They simply live by clearer principles than you do. Napoleon Hill called this the spiritual spine. An unshakable system of values, a set of inner commitments stronger than the soft excuses life often offers. When you live without principles, you are easily swept away by emotions, easily swayed by every gust of circumstance. But when you live by principles, you always have a foundation to return to, a direction to recalibrate toward, and a map to guide you no matter how stormy the skies become. He'll never encourage you to chase quick changes. He never taught that positive thinking is enough or belief is everything. Instead, he handed you practical life principles, deep enough to shift the roots of your thinking, strong enough to shape your behavior, and clear enough for you to act on them today. He never promised you overnight success, but he did guarantee that if you live consistently by these 10 foundational principles, then with every passing day you will draw closer to the best version of yourself. Not living by fleeting emotions, but by a clear vision and unwavering faith. These principles are not for those who prefer shortcuts. They are not hacks for quick success. They are the foundation upon which you build a resilient life from the inside out. Each principle is an invitation inviting you to become more responsible, more intentional, more disciplined, more focused, and more profound. Each principle is a brick for you to rebuild the foundation of your life, solid, aligned, and filled with meaning. And as you begin practicing them, you will feel the change, not loud or dramatic, but deep and steady, like an inner current quietly shifting its course. From someone who waits for life to change, you become someone who changes life itself. And that is why you don't need to wait for the perfect moment to begin. You don't need to wait for a new week, a new month, or a new year. The only moment that holds the power to begin is this very moment. The moment you decide, I will not live another repeat of the old year. I will enter this new year with a new set of values, with principles that cannot be shaken, no matter how the world outside may change. Step into this journey like a warrior of the inner world, not driven by impatience, but fueled by commitment, not waiting for inspiration, but trusting the process, because you are not just chasing a result, you are building a new version of yourself, stronger, clearer, and more intentional than ever before. In every journey of transformation, no door truly opens until you have learned the first lesson, the lesson of personal responsibility. Napoleon Hill once said, "Every great thing begins within." And the first step to mastering your life is to admit, I am responsible. It may sound simple, but this is where most people stumble. Because deep down, human beings instinctively look for an external reason to explain their internal struggles. It might be the economy, the way they were raised, an impractical education system, the people who once hurt them, or simply fate. Those reasons aren't entirely wrong. They might very well be true. But Hill wasn't concerned with what was factually accurate about your circumstances. He cared only about what would help you reclaim your power from the hands of others. When you blame, even just in your mind, you are handing over control of your destiny to something beyond your reach. When you say you can't because of someone or something, you are abandoning the creative power that already resides within you. Hill saw this clearly in many of the people he encountered, people who lived under the shadow of blame. He once recounted a simple yet profound story. A middle-aged man, struggling financially for many years, came to see him to pour out his frustration. He said his boss was unfair, his industry was in decline, and he hadn't been born into a privileged family. All of it sounded reasonable, but Hill didn't challenge any of it. He simply looked him in the eyes and asked one single question. What are you doing to change that? The silence that followed lasted longer than any excuse that could have been made. Because when you are forced to confront that question, there is nowhere left to hide. You are faced with the truth that sometimes no one has hurt you more than your own procrastination and inaction. He'll never ask you to deny the injustices that have happened to you. He only asks that you not live as if they are your life sentence. Responsibility doesn't mean you are the cause of everything bad that happened. It means you are the only one who can write the next chapter. And because of that, when you take responsibility, you are no longer the victim. You become the architect of your life. You no longer ask, why is this happening to me? But instead begin to ask, what can I do from here? That shift in questioning alone is enough to unlock an entirely new world. A world where you have choices, where you hold the power to decide, and where you have the chance to shape yourself through intentional action. What makes responsibility powerful is not how good it feels, but how real it feels. It forces you to confront the choices you've been avoiding. It demands that you face where you've lacked discipline, where you've procrastinated, and where you've chosen blame over action. And from there, you can begin to rebuild trust with yourself. Not the blind belief that everything will be okay, but a belief grounded in behavior, that every small action you take today becomes a brick to rebuild your self-respect, your initiative, and your core resilience. Napoleon Hill once emphasized, responsibility is not a burden, it is the beginning of freedom. Because only when you take responsibility do you truly gain the power to choose differently. And that power, the power to choose a new response, a new thought, a new behavior, is the most powerful gift anyone seeking transformation must embrace. So if you are standing at the threshold of a new journey, don't try to change everything at once. Start with one thing. Take responsibility, because the moment you stop blaming is the very moment you begin to lead. Once you dare to take responsibility, the first thing you may feel is not relief, but stillness. Because when there's no one left to blame, you are forced to look at yourself. No shield to hide behind, no layer of excuses to protect you. And yet it is precisely in that raw moment, as Napoleon Hill once said, that the greatest turning point in life occurs. Because it marks the moment you stop living reactively and start living like a sailor realizing he has drifted far from shore but still holds the helm. You no longer ask who brought you here, but channel all your energy into correcting the course. You don't need to be perfect to begin, but you must be honest. Honest with yourself that if you want your life to change, you must be the first to change. Napoleon Hill had observed hundreds of successful people and noticed that none of them began with ideal circumstances. Many came from poverty, had failed disastrously, been rejected, doubted, even ridiculed. But there was one undeniable trait they all shared. They didn't wait for someone to apologize to them, to compensate them, or to clean up the mess others had left. They did it themselves because they understood a truth so simple, yet so powerful. If you don't take responsibility for yourself, no one else will. No one. And no one should. Because deep down, only you can rewrite how you respond, how you think, how you act, and therefore rewrite your destiny. Responsibility doesn't come from perfection. It comes from daily choices. It shows in the smallest things. What time you wake up, what you do with the first 30 minutes of your day, how you respond when things don't go your way, whether or not you keep promises to yourself. Every one of those actions is a quiet declaration. Who is in charge of this life? Is it you? Or fleeting emotions? Is it you? Or the pushing of circumstance? Is it you? Or those old worn-out narratives replaying your mind like a broken record? Hill emphasized it is these silent choices, repeated over time, that shape who you become. You cannot take pride in your future if you refuse to take responsibility for your present. And interestingly, when you begin to live with responsibility, you no longer see yourself as a victim in the story. You become the storyteller, and you begin to rewrite the script, not through grand dramatic leaps, but through steady, clear, self-respecting steps. Hill believed, the moment you stop blaming is the moment you reclaim your power. You stop waiting and start creating. You no longer ask, why is this happening to me? Instead, you ask, what is this teaching me? And what will I do next to move forward? That's right. Responsibility is not a state you reach and hold on to forever. It is a decision you repeat every single day. Maybe today you do well, maybe tomorrow you veer off, but you come back. What matters is not that you never slip, but that you're always willing to correct. No one is perfect, but those who take responsibility don't use imperfection as a reason to delay. They use it as a reason to grow. Hill never demanded you become made of steel. He only asked that you stop running. Stop making excuses. Stop living a life drawn by someone else's hand and then complaining that it doesn't look like your dream. If you truly want change, if you want a life with gravity, direction, and depth, start with a seemingly simple but deeply powerful declaration. Everything that happens in my life, I take responsibility. Once a person has the courage to take responsibility for their life, what they need next is not a rush to act blindly, but a clear map to direct their inner strength toward the right path. Napoleon Hill once said, you can't get to where you want to go if you don't know exactly where that is. That sentence is simple, yet it strikes at a truth many people dare not admit, that they don't actually know what they want. They want success, but they can't define what success really means to them. They want a better life, but they let the idea of better drift aimlessly in vagueness. And Hill understood that this very vagueness is the reason why so many people live their entire lives on autopilot, working hard but seeing no progress, staying busy but never knowing where they're headed. To Hill, writing down goals wasn't just a tip for organizing life, it was a sacred act reflecting human creative power. When you write, you redefine yourself. You no longer live by circumstance, but by direction. And you no longer hope something might happen, you begin creating what will happen with awareness, commitment, and intentional action. It's no coincidence that successful people always carry a small notebook where they write, review, and adjust their goals daily. It's not just a habit. It's the unmistakable sign of a focused mind, one that knows what it wants and refuses to let life drift by aimlessly. But Hill also gave a warning. Writing down your goals is not enough. If you don't write, you're not serious. But if you write and then abandon it, you still haven't truly lived with it. Your goal needs to be placed in front of you every day. It needs to be read, visualized, and brought to life in your mind. It must be linked to a deep reason why you truly want it. And most importantly, it must be broken down into specific actions you can start today, because if you don't act, your words are just lifeless ink on paper. But if you act, even in small steps, that goal will begin to breathe. And you will begin to witness what Hill once called the miraculous power of a directed mind. Life will begin to realign, opportunities will appear, and you will gain clarity, not because the world has changed, but because you finally dared to become clear. When a goal is written down, that alone does not mean you are any closer to achieving it. What you hold in your hands at that moment, whether a grand plan or a simple line, is still just a promise on paper. And Napoleon Hill understood deeply that what separates dreamers from achievers is not how polished the plan looks, but the shift from ideals to action. It is consistent action, no matter how small, that is the true heartbeat of a living goal. Hill once said that a goal, not broken down, is like a castle without stairs. It may look magnificent, but you will forever stand outside, not knowing where to begin, unsure of the first step to take. And instead of acting, you fall into a justified state of delay, waiting for inspiration, waiting for better conditions, or convincing yourself that you're not ready yet. But Hill never encouraged waiting. He encouraged preparation and starting. He said, when you break a big goal into small steps, you're telling yourself, I know the path, and I have begun. Imagine you have a 1-year goal. The first thing you need to do is not to list the massive things you'll complete in 365 days. It is to determine, what must I complete this month, this week, today, to get just a little closer? A single specific action, no matter how small, when directly tied to a major goal, becomes far more powerful and impactful than a string of random, directionless tasks. And this is the truth Hill repeated time and again. It's not the big moves that bring great results, but the small, well-directed actions, repeated consistently over a long enough period of time. Another point Hill constantly emphasized, keep your goals in sight. Not in a symbolic sense, but in the literal one. Write them down and place them where you'll see them every day. On your desk, your bedroom mirror, the first page of your notebook. Read them again, visualize them as already achieved, and ask yourself every morning, what can I do today, no matter how small, to move one step closer to this goal? The frequent presence of your goal in your mind will activate your behavioral orientation system, making you more alert to relevant opportunities, more decisive when making choices, and more persistent in the face of challenges. And yes, there will be days when you see no progress, no results. Days that feel like you're walking in circles. Those days are inevitable. But Hill reminds you, that is not a reason to stop. That is the moment to remember why you began. To remind yourself, I don't have to do everything today. I just have to keep going. Because as he pointed out, consistency beats intensity. A small step taken in the right direction, repeated daily, creates a trajectory far greater than any impulsive action performed once and abandoned. If your goal is the map, then discipline is the quiet engine that moves you forward along its path. Without discipline, even the most perfect plan is nothing more than a promise suspended in midair. And Napoleon Hill understood this more deeply than anyone. In all his research on success, discipline emerged as an irreplaceable element. Not flashy, not loud, but the very core that separates those with real results from those with only dreams. Discipline is not about coercion. It is not a cage that imprisons freedom, but rather the silent foundation that creates the most enduring and profound kind of freedom. Freedom from procrastination, freedom from temptation, and freedom from the weakness of your own lower self. Hill once shared that he had mistaken inspiration for commitment. There was a time when he believed that as long as one had passion, as long as one had a burning desire, everything would fall into place. But reality gave him a very clear lesson. Emotions are like waves, strong but fleeting. Discipline, on the other hand, is like a current, steady, enduring, and dependable. When you rely on emotions to act, you work on the days you feel motivated and give up on the days you feel sluggish. But when you live with discipline, you act whether it's sunny or raining, whether you're happy or sad, whether you're winning or losing. And it's precisely those actions, unattached to mood, that truly carry you far. Discipline does not wait for emotional permission. It simply says, I do what needs to be done because I have committed to the person I want to become. You can start the day with a clear goal, but if you let your willpower be governed by, do I feel like it today, you are playing a dangerous game. Napoleon Hill often emphasized most failures don't happen because people aren't smart enough or talented enough, but because they didn't do the work long enough, consistently enough, and steadily enough to see the results. They quit too soon, not because the world rejected them, but because they gave up on themselves along the way. And the deeper cause of that surrender is always one thing: lack of discipline. Without discipline, you cannot keep your promises to yourself. And once you stop believing your own words, you lose the most vital internal resource, self-trust. He'll never ask you to become a machine, working blindly, emotionlessly, disconnected from your heart. He understood that human beings are emotional creatures, but he taught you how to train yourself to steer your emotions instead of being a slave to them. He often used the image of an Olympic athlete, not because they are constantly overflowing with energy every day, but because they understand this truth. Discipline is a muscle, and a muscle only grows when you repeat the right motion, even when tired, even when unseen, even when there are no immediate results. They wake up early, train in silence, endure the pain, not because the weather is nice that day, but because they've decided to live different. Likewise, you don't need discipline to do what is easy. You need discipline to keep going when everything inside you wants to quit. And then one day you'll realize it is discipline that gives you inspiration, not the other way around. Inspiration is born from seeing yourself keep your promise, seeing yourself take action without being reminded, seeing yourself inch closer to your chosen goal day by day. That is the deep, quiet satisfaction of someone who is truly in control of their life, not through grand declarations, but through small, intentional choices repeated each day. And if you are patient enough to live that way long enough, you will enter the highest form of freedom. Inner freedom. Freedom from needing external motivation, freedom from self-doubt, freedom from that voice in your head telling you you're not enough because you no longer have anything to prove. You are already living as the person you have chosen to become. Discipline does not strike like a bolt of lightning igniting the will. It doesn't come from sudden enlightenment or a burst of fleeting motivation. Napoleon Hill once said, discipline is built from the small victories you win over yourself each day. And it is those very small victories, though often unseen, uncelebrated, that quietly lay the bricks of an unshakable inner strength, self-trust. A person may be intelligent, talented, creative, but if they constantly break promises to themselves, they will gradually lose respect for who they are. And once you stop believing in your own words, once you stop trusting your ability to follow through on what you set out to do, No plan will be strong enough to lift you back up. Hill advised against starting with force or expecting to transform your entire life overnight. He encouraged you to begin with one small thing, a simple commitment that you know without doubt you can carry out. It could be waking up 15 minutes earlier each day. It could be avoiding your phone for the first 30 minutes of the morning. It could be writing one line in a journal every night. It doesn't matter how big or small it looks to others. What matters is that you chose it and you kept your word. When you do this day after day, you are sending yourself a quiet but powerful message. I am someone who can be trusted. And that trust in yourself, is the first step to unlocking every other door to change. Success does not come from a giant leap. It comes from thousands of short steps that never stop. Hill understood the law of accumulation. He compared discipline to making deposits into an invisible bank account. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, you're adding credit to your reserve of willpower. And one day, when you face a bigger challenge, a crucial decision, a difficult period, those silent credits will hold you up. You will no longer need to convince yourself that I can do it because you will have proven it again and again through action. Hill also emphasized a vital point. Do not set unrealistic commitments just to fail at the very first step. Be honest with yourself. If you are struggling with procrastination, don't force yourself into 5 a.m. routines or 2-hour daily workouts right away. Start with 10 minutes of focused work, 5 lines of journaling, or one single task completed before noon. Discipline doesn't come from dramatic gestures. It comes from sustainable behavior. And when you build a chain of days in which you keep your promises, no matter how small, you are constructing a mental structure no advice can replace: self-respect. What's remarkable is that when you live with discipline, the world begins to treat you differently, not because you've changed how others see you, but because you've changed how you see yourself. You walk with more confidence. You speak with the weight of someone who's done what they said they would. You no longer need to fake confidence because it now flows from within. From the times you followed through on your own promises without supervision, without reward, simply for one reason: because I said I would. Hill firmly believed greatness doesn't lie in grand milestones, but in the quiet actions repeated long enough to become character. And if at some point you slip, you forget, you break a promise, do not rush to condemn yourself. Hill reminded us, discipline is not perfection. It is the ability to return after you've strayed. No journey is a straight line, but a disciplined person does not let a stumble turn into permanent collapse. They recalibrate, forgive, and keep going, with patience, with self-respect, and with the belief that if I once kept my word, I can keep it again. You may have a clear goal. You may possess strong discipline, but if you live in the wrong environment, everything you're building will be gradually eroded. Napoleon Hill deeply understood something that many people tend to overlook. Success is not merely the result of personal effort. It is also shaped by the silent influence of the people you allow around you every single day. Just like a good seed cannot grow in barren soil, a soul full of aspiration cannot blossom in an environment filled with doubt, stagnation, and negativity. Hill witnessed countless capable individuals buried, not because they lacked potential, but because they were in the wrong place, with the wrong people, absorbing the wrong energy. He often asked his students, who were the 5 people you spend the most time interacting with each week? That question, while seemingly simple, holds an incredibly significant clue, because you will become like them in the way you think, the way you speak, the level of expectation you hold, even in how you deal with adversity. If you're surrounded by people who always make excuses, you will slowly come to see that as normal. If you're around people who constantly procrastinate, you'll find that skipping today doesn't seem to matter. If you're close to those who complain, you'll unconsciously allow yourself to live on a negative frequency. But on the other hand, if you're around people who strive relentlessly, who believe deeply, who dare to dream big and act daily, that very spirit will seep into you like a quiet flame spreading through the night. Hill told the story of a young entrepreneur full of ambition, yet unable to push his business forward. Not because he lacked knowledge, but because every time he came up with a new idea, his close friends would laugh, belittle, and call it unrealistic. Every time he felt a bit of fire inside, it would be doused by comments like, "Come on, stop dreaming." And over time, he began to doubt himself. His belief wavered, his desire faded. It wasn't until he began changing his environment, seeking like-minded individuals, joining startup communities, connecting with those who dared to dream, that everything began to shift. Not simply because he was helped, but because he was fueled in the right way. Hill called this changing frequencies. When you elevate the frequency around you, you elevate your inner life. Without force, and then you must be ready to face the truth. Not everyone who once walked with you will continue the journey. There are relationships, no matter how close, that must be released if they no longer share your vision. Hill did not promote cold-hearted severance. He simply taught you how to protect your energy. You don't need to judge anyone, but you must make new choices. Who is truly worthy of your time, your mind, your devotion? Because your environment is not just where you live, it is the mental and emotional nutrition you absorb daily. And if you don't actively choose it, you will be shaped by it passively, becoming a diluted version of your own potential. Hill believed that a good environment is not just a place full of successful people. It is a space where people know how to listen, know how to challenge your thinking, know how to encourage you at the right moment and tell you the truth when you need to hear it. It's a space where you don't have to pretend to be strong, but you're not allowed to stay weak for too long either. It's a place where every conversation makes you think deeper, live more consciously, and act more decisively. If you're fortunate enough to find people like that, treasure them. If not yet, start searching. And if still no one appears, begin by becoming that kind of person. One of the quietest yet most powerful steps in your journey of personal growth is the intentional restructuring of your inner circle. Not with noise, not with drama, but with clarity and quiet resolve. Napoleon Hill once said, "Your environment is the whisper of the limitations you're silently placing on yourself." That is not a philosophical abstraction. It is a cold truth. You cannot fly far if you keep locking yourself inside the cage of shallow conversations, superficial advice, skeptical glances, and habits that pull you back to where you started. Hill never taught you to be cold or unkind, but he was unwavering in one truth. Growth demands discernment. You cannot renew your life while holding on to outdated influences. And rebuilding your circle doesn't mean you must erase all existing connections. It simply means asking a new set of questions. Who in my life is nurturing my vision? Who challenges me to become better? Who brings me back to myself whenever I waver? And conversely, who makes me feel smaller, more fragile, more doubtful of myself just because I dare to dream big? The answers to these questions don't need to be announced. They only need to be answered honestly within yourself, clearly enough to help you make adjustments. Gradually but decisively. Napoleon Hill suggested seeking out 3 types of people to intentionally connect with. First is the guide, someone who has walked ahead of you, stumbled, learned, and built what you now aspire to create. Their presence is not just a source of inspiration, but a living map you can learn from every single day. Hill believed that with just one true mentor, you could compress a 10-year journey into a few years or even months because you no longer need to stumble in the dark. Second is the companion, those who share your values, walk a similar path, and may not be wildly successful yet, but who are always ready to lift you up, ask you about your commitments, and walk with you through the unseen part of the journey. And third, do not forget the challenger, those who don't always agree with you, and for that very reason, keep you from becoming complacent. They ask the hard questions to reveal blind spots and force you to clarify and deepen what you believe. And then there are the relationships that need to be decreased in frequency, not because those people are bad, but because you are heading in a different direction. Hill emphasized, Not everyone is meant to walk the entire journey with you. Some people were only designed to appear in a short chapter, and the worst thing you can do is try to drag them into the next one when neither of you speaks the same language of life anymore. The affection doesn't disappear. The gratitude doesn't need to be erased. But you have the right and the responsibility to protect your mental and emotional space. No one but you can do that. If you don't, no one else will. And if you don't have the courage to choose again, then every effort you make to change on the inside will be slowly undone by the influence of the outside. Recreating your environment begins with small decisions, limiting meaningless conversations, avoiding chronic complaining, choosing spaces that radiate positive energy, and investing time in people who are genuinely moving forward. Join communities that share your vision. Read the books written by people you aspire to be like. Listen to success stories, not just to admire, but to learn and follow. Hill believed, when you place yourself in the right stream, your life begins to flow without force. And finally, don't forget this. You are not merely a recipient of your environment. You are part of someone else's. Ask yourself, am I someone who inspires, or am I unconsciously draining someone's energy? When you become a source of encouragement, you will naturally attract people who live on the same frequency. And then, you're not just someone who chooses an environment, you're someone who helps create it every day with your words, your actions, and by the way you live as a silent declaration that I am committed to growth and I am building a space worthy of the person I aspire to become. Throughout decades of studying success, Napoleon Hill never claimed that genius or luck was the deciding factor. On the contrary, he consistently pointed to the quietest, most persistent, and least celebrated element: consistency. It doesn't shine like passion. It doesn't dazzle like achievement. But consistency is the irreplaceable foundation upon which every great journey is built. Because success doesn't come from sudden breakthroughs. It comes from small steps repeated long enough without quitting. Hill called it the art of intelligent persistence. Not blindly charging ahead, but knowing you're on the right path and continuing, even when the world gives you no feedback. We often begin with enthusiasm. The first day of a new plan always feels charged with energy. The first week at the gym, the opening pages of that unfinished book, the promises made at the start of the year, all feel doable. But as the excitement fades, reality creeps in. Work intrudes, emotions fluctuate, results remain invisible, and so we delay, then give up. Hill once said, anyone can start, but only those with consistency can finish. That's why he always taught. Success doesn't belong to the fastest, but to the most persistent. Consistency doesn't require you to do a lot each day. It only asks that you don't stop. A little bit, every day, one small task repeated, a simple habit kept uninterrupted. Hill often compared consistency to swinging an axe at a large tree. Just 5 swings a day, not until exhaustion, but done steadily, in the same spot, in the same direction. At first, nothing appears to change. The tree stands unmoved. But after 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, if you persist, there will come a day when just one final swing brings it down. Outsiders may call it a breakthrough or sudden success, but only you will know it was the result of 100 quiet efforts no one ever saw. What makes consistency difficult is not the time it takes, but the fact that it requires you to overcome yourself every day. Overcome laziness. Overcome perfectly reasonable excuses. Overcome procrastination dressed up as something more urgent. Hill understood this well. He didn't promote pushing yourself to the point of burnout. He taught you to create a structure that makes consistency easier. That's why he encouraged building small habits, repeated at the same time, in the same place. So your mind stops wrestling and simply moves into action. Because when you reduce reliance on willpower, you increase your ability to maintain rhythm. But more importantly, consistency creates accumulation. And that accumulation is a kind of miracle. 1 page a day. By year's end, that's 365 pages, the equivalent of a book you've written for yourself. 10 minutes of focused work each morning. Over a year, that's more than 60 hours fully dedicated to your dream. One promise kept each day. Not for praise, but because you choose to live with gravity. Will change the way you see yourself, and when you begin to see yourself as someone steadfast, you'll begin to act in alignment with that identity. Hill believed repeated behavior shapes a new self. No shouting needed, no grand declarations, just doing. Every day, on time, for the right reason. Consistency is not the symbol of the stubborn. It is the expression of someone deeply committed. They don't need immediate results to keep going. They understand that sowing always comes before harvest. And they are willing to live in the silent zone of the journey, where no one acknowledges them, no one sees, there is no applause, but they continue anyway, because they know this is the only way to move toward a life of true worth. On the journey to finding success and living a meaningful life, Napoleon Hill never underestimated a resource that may seem intangible, but ultimately determines a person's entire destiny: time. Unlike money, which can be lost and earned again, unlike health, which can recover, unlike opportunities, which may wait, time is a current that never flows backward. Every passing second is a portion of life being spent either intentionally moving you closer to what you want or unconsciously pulling you away from the person you long to become. And Hill always reminded us, you don't live year by year or month by month. You live hour by hour, minute by minute through every choice you make today. He once asked his students a simple question: are you spending time or investing it? Because there's a profound difference between being busy and being effective. Busy people are often caught in the endless whirl of reacting to the world around them. They do a lot but go nowhere. Effective people, on the other hand, are those who understand what truly matters and deliberately invest their time in things that generate real value. Value for themselves, for their purpose, and for the life they want to build. For Hill, this wasn't just a work management skill, it was a life philosophy. Because how you use time is how you live. He believed that true time management doesn't require a complicated planner, it requires clarity of priorities. Ask yourself, if I could only complete 3 things today, which 3 would move me closer to my goals? That question can transform your entire schedule, because it forces you to face the truth. Not all tasks are equally important. Not everyone deserves your time equally. Not every invitation, every conversation, every email, every notification deserves a response. Hill taught something that many people take years to realize. You don't need to do more. You need to do the right things and do them when you are at your best. One of the simplest yet most effective tools Hill recommended was planning the night before. When you take a few quiet minutes before bed to identify what matters most for tomorrow, you're giving yourself a proactive start. The next morning, you won't waste time in indecision. You won't be swept into reaction mode. You'll already have a compass, and you'll act with direction. Additionally, blocking out fixed periods of time, such as 2 hours of deep, uninterrupted focus, can move you forward far more quickly than spending an entire day fragmented by distractions and getting little done. Hill consistently emphasized, deep focus in short bursts is exponentially more effective than scattered attention across a week. However, time management isn't just about organizing your workload. It's also the art of saying no deliberately. Every time you say yes to something unimportant, you're implicitly saying no to something that deserves to be prioritized. Hill called this life's trade-off equation. Successful people aren't those who do everything. They're the ones who are crystal clear on what they will not do, so they can dedicate their energy, focus, and time to what is truly worthy. And when something worthy receives your steady investment each day, it creates a profound transformation, not just in your career, but in your entire life experience. You cannot control everything that happens in life, but you can always control one thing: how you use your time. Hill believed that if you spend just 1 hour a day developing yourself, learning something new, moving closer to the best version of who you can be, a year from now, you won't recognize the person you are today. And if you don't do that a year from now, you also won't recognize yourself. Only this time in disappointment, doubt, and regret. So right now, as you're reading these words, pause for a moment and ask yourself, am I living in a way that honors the time life has given me? If time is the most precious asset in one's life, then every minute you live is a coin being spent, unredeemable, non-refundable, and impossible to save. Napoleon Hill always regarded time as the most honest measurement of what you truly value. Don't look at the words you use to express what you want. Look at how you use your time each day. It will tell you what you're truly living for or what you're trying to avoid. Hill never taught people to cram their schedules to feel busy. On the contrary, he taught them how to become focused. Because doing more does not mean you are getting closer to what matters. Only when you learn to direct your time with intention can you truly take control of your future. And to achieve that, Hill pointed you toward a simple but powerful mindset shift. Instead of always asking, what do I need to do today? Learn to ask, what is most worthy of my time today? Among the countless things you could do, only a few truly make an impact. Hill called these leverage actions, small tasks with the potential to shift your entire trajectory if done consistently, with discipline, and at the right time. But you'll never recognize them if you're living in reactive mode, being pulled by notifications, news, requests from others, or the erratic waves of your own emotions. You can only recognize what's truly worthy when you pause, reflect, and choose deliberately. One of the most practical strategies Hill recommended is starting the day in silence. Just 10 minutes in the morning to sit down and write out the 3 most important tasks you must complete. Not 10, not everything on your mind, just 3. 3 actions that, if completed, will move you 1 real step forward in your journey, rather than merely clearing backlog. This practice not only provides clarity, it helps you say no. Because once your priorities are set, it becomes easier to turn down what does not serve your core goals. Hill also advised organizing your time around what he called golden performance windows, dedicating your most alert, focused, and mentally sharp hours to your most important work. Don't let email replies, scrolling through news, or random conversations steal those prime hours. Guard those windows as if you were protecting your future. Because when you do important work at your highest quality time, you not only finish faster, but create better results. And over time, those results will compound into something remarkable. Equally important, however, is resting properly. Hill did not advocate a lifestyle of burning yourself out in a race against time. He understood that a fatigued mind, no matter how much time you give it, cannot produce quality work. So build quiet moments into your schedule. A silent walk, a cup of tea without a screen, an evening with no emails, no projects. Not to indulge laziness, but to recharge, regain clarity, and return with a proactive mindset. Those who rest wisely are the ones who endure the longest races. And finally, Hill always reminded you of a seemingly simple yet foundational truth behind all strategies. Be present in every moment you live. When you work, give it your all. When you listen, listen wholeheartedly. When you rest, rest completely. Being fully present allows you not only to make the most of time, but to feel time. And that's what makes each day more profound, meaningful, and worth living than ever before. Napoleon Hill once said, "Attitude is the first thing you must learn to control if you want to control anything else in your life." Because every action you take, every decision you make, and every reaction you show is guided by the attitude you carry in each moment. A positive attitude is not a surface expression. It is a quiet current flowing within you, shaping how you see the world, how you handle failure, how you face challenges, and most importantly, how you view yourself in the midst of constant change. And if you want your life to be deeply and sustainably prosperous, there is no starting point more crucial than changing your attitude. Hill firmly believed that circumstances do not determine your fate. It is your response to those circumstances that shapes your destiny. Faced with the same adversity, some people fall apart, while others rise. Given the same challenge, some hesitate, while others turn it into a launching pad. The difference doesn't lie in the difficulty of the situation, but in each person's lens. And that lens is attitude. If you wear a pair of dull gray glasses, the world will always appear cold, negative, and full of limitations. But if you choose to wear lenses of clarity and faith, you'll realize that even in seemingly disadvantageous situations, there's always a ray of light waiting to be discovered. A positive attitude does not mean denying reality or blindly embracing optimism. Hill called it grounded optimism, a mental state where you choose to look at everything through the light of solutions instead of falling into the shadows of problems. A positive person is not someone who never faces hardship. They are simply someone who chooses not to let hardship define them. They don't let a bad day turn into a bad life. They don't let rejection silence their inner voice. They don't let past mistakes chain them to the past. Instead, they ask, what can I learn? What can I change? And what actions can I take to move forward? Hill once shared a story of two shoe salesmen sent to a village where no one had ever worn shoes. The first called the company, complaining that this was a terrible market. No one had any demand. The second called back, full of excitement. Huge opportunity. No one here owns shoes. The potential is limitless. Same situation, yet completely different conclusions. It's the clearest proof of the power of attitude. One person sees limitations, another sees possibilities. And the second man, with belief, initiative, and a positive mindset, was the one who made a difference. A positive attitude is also how you treat yourself every day. Instead of blaming yourself, you learn to encourage yourself. Instead of feeling inferior, you learn to acknowledge every small step forward. Instead of living in the past, you learn to focus on the present and look toward the future. Hill believed that each time you choose a positive thought over a negative one, you are rewriting the script of your life, line by line. And the miracle is this. When you maintain that state long enough, the world around you begins to change. You attract more positive people. Opportunities become clearer, solutions appear faster, and miracles begin to unfold, not as magic, but as a natural outcome. But a positive attitude does not come naturally. It is the result of discipline, of repeatedly making the same choice every single day, choosing to focus on what's good instead of what's wrong, choosing gratitude over complaint, choosing action over helplessness. Every morning when you wake up, you get to decide what energy you will carry through your day. And if you choose to carry faith, hope, and positivity, you are planting small seeds of prosperity that one day will grow into a radiant forest of light. A positive attitude is not a gift you randomly receive when life smiles upon you. It is not a state reserved for moments when everything goes smoothly, everyone supports you, and results arrive on time. Napoleon Hill emphasized that a positive attitude is a conscious choice, an inner discipline cultivated daily. No one wakes up every morning in a perfect state, forever. Even the strongest individuals have moments of doubt, disappointment, and the urge to give up. But the difference is they don't let those emotions dictate their behavior. They have a system, a mental foundation to recalibrate themselves before the world has a chance to pull them down. Hill believed that the root of a positive attitude lies in your ability to proactively manage your thoughts. Every thought you allow to linger in your mind is a seed. If you let negative seeds, worry, envy, fear, resentment, take root, they will suffocate your clarity, drain your motivation, and ultimately pull you away from the best version of yourself. But if you learn to observe your thoughts, filter them, and replace limiting beliefs with ones that are more positive and realistic, your mental space will begin to brighten. This doesn't happen overnight, but it can begin in just a few quiet minutes each morning, where you write down what you're grateful for, what you aim toward, and which virtues you commit to uphold. One of the most powerful ways to cultivate a positive attitude, according to Hill, is to practice gratitude actively. Don't wait for something extraordinary to feel grateful. Choose to feel gratitude, even for the smallest, simplest things. A clear sky, an unexpected smile, a lesson learned from failure. Because when you live in a state of gratitude, you no longer feel deprived. You enter the flow of abundance, and those who live in abundance see life through a positive lens. Because they're not obsessed with what they lack, they deeply appreciate what they already have. Hill once wrote, "Gratitude is the nourishment that grows a positive soul." Another essential element in training a positive attitude is to consciously shield your mind from negativity. In a world flooded with alarming news, social media comparisons, and an environment prone to anxiety, curating the content you absorb daily is crucial. Don't default to turning something on just to fill silence. Choose to listen to things that inspire. Read content that elevates your awareness. Converse with people who fuel hope instead of extinguishing dreams. Hill didn't just speak of positivity as an attitude. He saw it as an internal environment that you are responsible for designing and safeguarding every day. Another key point, positivity spreads like fire. When you maintain a solid positive spirit, you don't just rescue yourself from stagnation. You become a source of light for others. You'll be amazed how a single encouraging word from you, a calm demeanor in a tense moment, or a smile amid hardship can shift someone else's entire mood. Hill always believed a positive attitude is not just a personal advantage, it is a quiet yet powerful contribution to the world you live in. And finally, remember this, cultivating a positive attitude doesn't mean you have to be cheerful all the time or perpetually strong. It simply means you are consistently choosing to return to the light, even when you're standing in the dark. It means you choose not to be ruled by fear. It means you know you have the right to redefine a bad day. It means you dare to believe that although today is hard, tomorrow will be better, because you're putting in the effort to become better. And that, according to Hill, is the clearest sign of a truly positive mindset. Not perfect, but always rising. Napoleon Hill always regarded learning as the only true path to sustainable personal evolution. To him, learning does not end with a diploma, nor is it confined to any particular professional skill. Learning is a deliberate act, one that must be maintained throughout life if you wish to avoid being left behind, not only in your career, but in your journey toward mastering yourself. In a world that constantly changes, the danger isn't in knowing less than others. It's in ceasing to take in new things because you believe you already know enough. Hill once said, "The moment you think you no longer need to learn is the moment you begin to slow down." And that slowing down, if not recognized in time, will quietly pull you out of the stream of growth until one day you wake up and realize you've become outdated, not just in knowledge, but in mindset. Hill clearly distinguished between learning to know and learning to become. Learning to know merely stops at the level of information. You read a book, memorize some facts, repeat clever-sounding phrases, but your life doesn't change. Learning to become is the process of taking in knowledge, reflecting on it, applying it to your life, and allowing it to transform how you think, how you act, and how you show up in the world. Hill didn't care how many books you read, how many seminars you attended, or how many certificates you collected. He asked only one question: who have you become through what you've learned? That is why Hill always encouraged intentional learning, not learning because others are doing it, not learning to chase trends, but learning what truly expands your worldview, enriches your thinking, and brings you closer to the best version of yourself. It could be a skill that serves your career. It could be knowledge that helps you understand human psychology. Or it could simply be a life principle that enables you to see things with more calm and depth. Whatever it is, Make sure what you're learning doesn't just go into your memory, it transforms into action, because learning only holds real value when it becomes part of what you do. Hill once told the story of a successful man who had begun to feel stuck in his career. When asked what he was learning recently, the man fell silent. He had stopped thinking. He had already arrived. But in life, there is no fixed destination. Change is the only constant. And if you're not moving forward, you're already falling behind, even if you're standing still. Hill reignited the man's spirit of learning, and within just a few months, through reading, meeting people who were more advanced and experimenting with new ideas, his mind lit up again, and his career path reopened, not because someone came to rescue him, but because he refreshed himself through learning. To Hill, lifelong learning was also a way to maintain mental flexibility. A person who continually learns is never trapped in outdated thinking. They're not afraid of being wrong because they understand that mistakes are part of the learning process. They don't cling to the idea of, this is just who I am, but are open to trying new ways of living if it leads to better outcomes. And for that reason, they always have a place in any era. Because they don't resist change, they walk with it, with curiosity, intention, and humility. No one is forcing you to learn every day, but if you choose to do so, you will start to see the difference. Just 30 minutes of reading, a podcast during your workout, a thoughtful question when meeting someone new, a curiosity that's nurtured. These small things, when repeated consistently, will transform you into someone who is thoughtful, creative, and constantly evolving, regardless of your age, your circumstances, or your profession. In a world that moves at a relentless pace and overflows with noise, lifelong learning is not a lofty ideal. It is a survival strategy. Napoleon Hill understood clearly that while most people desire growth, few manage to sustain the fire of learning once their schedule is packed with work, family, responsibilities, and fatigue. And it is precisely in those moments that the spirit of learning should not rely on sheer willpower. It must be integrated as a natural part of your lifestyle, like breathing, like habit, like a steady current that flows effortlessly, yet transforms the inner depth of a person. Hill once said, "You don't need to learn a lot at once. You just need to keep learning consistently without pause." So how do you sustain that spirit amidst a crowded life? First, Hill advised redefining the concept of learning. Learning doesn't mean sitting at a desk with a thick textbook. Learning is the subtle process that unfolds every time you observe someone doing something better than you, every time you listen to a deep conversation, every time you dare to try something new, even though you've never done it before. If you view learning as a separate activity, you will always feel like there's no time. But if you make learning your way of life, where every moment holds a lesson, then your entire existence becomes a classroom without walls, without blackboards, yet filled with profound insights. He'll also emphasize the importance of designing a personal learning system. Instead of waiting for inspiration to strike, create a structure that makes learning easy and natural.